Early MPF withdrawals for the terminally ill. Owiana on Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people, and Russia accused of trying to start World War III over Ukraine.
Hello and a very good evening. The government has proposed reforms relating to early MPF withdrawals. It covers those who are ill and have less than a year to live. As Jean de Silva reports, there are also plans to allow retirees to withdraw their money in stages.
Medical bills can be extremely costly, and for many seriously ill workers, their MPF savings can be life-saving. Currently, only in certain situations, such as death or permanently leaving Hong Kong, can employees get their pension money before they reach 65. But the MPF Schemes Authority has decided to relax the restrictions to allow those with terminal illnesses to withdraw their funds. That is, as long as they have a registered doctor to certify they have a maximum of 1 year left in their life. As for the definition of terminal illness, the authority said it's legally difficult to list them all out, so it will have to rely on the doctor's judgment. And right now, retiring workers can choose to either withdraw all their funds or leave it in the MPF account. The authority is now proposing to allow retirees to withdraw their money in stages. In a bid to minimize administrative costs, a maximum of 4 withdrawals can be made each year at a minimum of $5,000 each. This will also apply to those aged 60 or above choosing to retire early. As for workers who suffer a permanent loss of their ability to work, they currently need both a doctor's certificate and proof from their workplace for early MPF withdrawals. But a proposed change will simplify the process to just a doctor's certificate. Lawmakers will examine the proposals next month, and they could be implemented in the next legislative year at the earliest.
First of all, with life expectancy being a lot longer, so you are actually supporting a retirement life which would be 20-25 years. So you really need that retirement money over a longer period. So you may not need that money right on day one. Okay. And secondly is you don't suddenly become an investment wizard at retirement.
Even though the MPF is often criticized on a number of grounds, ever since its introduction in 2000, the number of workers that enjoy some form of retirement protection has risen from just over 30% to 84%. Jean de Silva, TVB News.
Political reform was on the agenda during talks between a visiting group of Hong Kong media executives and top mainland officials in Beijing today. Basic Law Committee Chairman Li Fei dismissed the idea of party nominations in the 2017 chief executive election. Li Fei and the committee's vice chairman Zhang Rongshun met with the Hong Kong media delegation at the Great Hall of the People. Afterwards, the media executives explained Li's stance on political reform. They quoted Li as saying there are 5 key points that most people agree with. Among them, the majority of Hong Kong people agree to electing by universal suffrage the chief executive in 2017 and the legislature in 2020. Secondly, universal suffrage must be based on the law. And thirdly, it must be fair and just, reasonably ensuring that Hong Kong people have the freedom to express their wishes. Also, Li agreed that the CE shall be appointed by the central government, the process in which the central government will play an important role. And finally, he talked about pushing forward universal suffrage, which he said would further promote democracy and improve governance. One of the delegation members, Ronald Chew, said Li talked about the major bone of contention in Hong Kong, whether the SAR will allow a person who opposes the central government to become chief executive. Chew quoted Li as saying that would be a threat to national security and would not be beneficial for Hong Kong in the long run. Several election proposals that were put forward have suggested coming up with CE candidates through civic and party nominations, as well as by the nominating committee. This, they hope, will prevent candidates who aren't favoured by Beijing from being screened out. But Li was quoted as saying there is no need for party nominations. He insisted that the nominating committee is already a fair way of coming up with candidates because it consists of members from all walks of society. The Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong officially submitted its political reform proposal today. As Rani Samtani reports, the party brushed aside criticism of its blueprint.
Members of the pro-establishment DAB delivered their reform proposal to Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam today. They also submitted 14,466 questionnaires they'd conducted when formulating their reform package. The proposal, unveiled earlier this week, requires potential candidates to receive the support of half of the members of the nominating committee in order to run in the election. That has come under fire from Pan Democrats.
First of all, we have to make sure that our suggestions are according to basic law, and secondly, we have to make sure that we have public support. Of course, we understand that there are some comments after we release our proposal, but we will continue to listen and communicate with other sectors of the community in order to build up a consensus within the society.
Meanwhile, the Small and Medium Law Firms Association surveyed 157 solicitors and barristers about their views on political reform. 70% of those surveyed said that the civil and party nomination of candidates does not comply with Article 45 of the Basic Law. And approximately 83% said the nominating committee should consist of between 800 and 1,600 members. Of the legal professionals who took part in the survey, a majority of them said they do not support the Occupy Central movement because it could harm the rule of law in Hong Kong. President of the association, Maggie Chan, who's also a DAB member, said the survey results will be submitted to the government. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Politicians, business leaders, celebrities and athletes are among 100 people named by Time magazine as the most influential in the world. Among them is the Indonesian domestic helper whose alleged abuse at the hands of her Hong Kong employer made headlines here and overseas. It's that time of the year again when Time magazine releases its special issue outlining who it thinks are the 100 most influential people in the world. Among the chosen ones is none other than Ariana Solistiansi, the Indonesian woman whose alleged abuse at the hands of her employer here in Hong Kong made international headlines and highlighted the plight of domestic helpers living and working in the SAR. In a statement, she thanked Time for its recognition and hoped the honour would help improve the conditions of migrant workers in Hong Kong and around the world. Ariana was among 41 women who made the list. Other notable names include former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Pakistani student activist Malala Yousafzai, and pop stars Miley Cyrus and Beyoncé. But one Time editor felt US Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen was the most powerful of her female peers.
Some people who've argued she's the most powerful woman since Catherine the Great, or one of sort of history's great figures, and you can make that argument, and that is quite remarkable, and I think I would say, and most people would agree.
Representing the men, the usual suspects, including politicians such as President Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Barack Obama, and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un makes the list, as does whistleblower and former intelligence analyst Edward Snowden, whose leak of classified files last year exposed the extent of US spying activity. Entrepreneurs also feature, including the likes of Jack Ma, whose Alibaba platform has enabled millions worldwide to conduct trade online and grow their businesses.
US President Barack Obama is in South Korea tonight on the latest leg of his Asian tour. He wrapped up his state visit to Japan with some progress being made in trade talks. Alan Buckner reports.
President Obama left Tokyo with his mission only partly accomplished. U.S. officials hailed the talks on the Trans-Pacific Partnership as a breakthrough, but there were still gaps that could upend a final agreement. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called Obama's visit historic, citing the president's statement that the U.S. would defend Tokyo in any confrontation with Beijing over the disputed islands in the East China Sea called the Senkakus by Japan and the Diaoyus by China. On the trade talks, Japanese officials were less upbeat. The two sides narrowed their differences in key areas of market access related to agriculture and automobiles, and agreed to keep talking. Officials did say there was significant progress made in relation to a number of other areas, such as tariffs in pork and dairy products. Obama later landed in Seoul for a meeting with South Korean President Park Geun-hye on the second leg of his four-country Asian tour. While the two leaders did agree in general terms to expand economic ties, the major topic of discussion was the continued saber-rattling by North Korea.
Threats will get North Korea nothing other than greater isolation. And we're united on the steps Pyongyang needs to take, including abandoning their nuclear weapons and ballistic weapons program and living up to their international obligations. Of course, we're also deeply concerned about the suffering of the North Korean people. And the United States and South Korea are working together to advance accountability for the serious human rights violations being committed by the North.
Obama says it may be time to consider further sanctions against Pyongyang. Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk says Russia wants to start World War III by occupying Ukraine. The remarks come as Moscow launches a new round of military drills near its border with Ukraine in response to a Ukrainian military operation that killed as many as 5 pro-Russian rebels. James Aiken with the story.
It was the first time Kiev's troops have used lethal force to recapture territory from pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian forces closing in on the separatist stronghold say they removed 3 checkpoints manned by armed groups in the city of Slavyansk, one of the region's hotspots. Russia criticizes the military advance as punitive. Russian President Vladimir Putin says it would be a grave crime for Kiev to use its army against its own people. The Kremlin, which says it has the right to invade Ukraine to protect Russian speakers, was quick to launch new army drills near the border, raising fears its troops will invade. A week after the Geneva Agreement was announced to de-escalate the crisis, accusations are becoming increasingly blunt.
Let's get real. The Geneva Agreement is not open to interpretation. It is not vague. It is not subjective. It is not optional.
We call Russia to stop the madness they are doing, because that madness leads Russia to unpredictable consequences.
So far, those consequences have come in the form of visa bans and acid freezes against a few powerful people in Putin's inner circle. Washington is expected to turn up the pressure on reluctant European nations to act on further measures against Russia. And the Standard & Poor's credit rating agency has downgraded Russia's credit rating, making it more expensive for Russia to borrow on international markets. The agency cited continued unrest that threatens international investment. Meanwhile, Ukraine is pressing on with its military offensive against pro-Russian rebel strongholds in the east. The rebels are vowing to continue occupying local government buildings until they achieve autonomy for their regions. But Kiev says its anti-terrorist operation has enough military resources to keep up the offensive around the clock. James Aiken, TVB News.
And still ahead in the news tonight. Questions raised about Lama boat disaster reports. Not a bad return by Michael Phelps. And what exactly is a zonky?
God is a mean kid with a magnifying glass. I'm a victim. I'm not okay with a mediocre life.
You've been doing a lot of complaining about me.
Who are you?
I'm God. Anyway, I brought you here to offer you a job. My job. Having fun?
If you were endowed with the power of God, how would you use it?
My new co-anchor may need a glass of water.
Jim Carrey in Bruce Almighty, Saturday on Pearl's Weekend Blockbuster. The outstanding achievements and contributions of distinguished marketers deserves to be recognized. Since 2005, HKMA TVB Awards for Marketing Excellence has been presenting individual awards to honor distinguished marketers and bestow prestige and recognition upon them. The time has come for you to acknowledge the marketing elite in your company.
The HKMA TVB Awards
for Marketing Excellence
is open for entry now. Give us your support.
HKMA TVB Awards for Marketing